Hi guys, it's Mrs. Ulmer, and today we are going to review those organelles of the cell that you learned in your breakout room. So make sure you have your chart because I'll be going over the correct answers to the chart so that you can fix any mistakes that you might have. So let's get started. So remember, organelles are like organs of the cells. They're tiny structures that perform those functions necessary for life. So an organelle is just a tiny structure, a tiny part that does a job. So let's take a look at the 13 organelles that you're going to have to know. So first of all, we have four basic parts, four basic organelles that all cells, doesn't matter what kind of cell you are, you're going to have these four basic parts. So we're going to start by looking at those four basic parts found in all cells. The first is the cell membrane. So again, this is found in prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells, both plant and animals. And the cell membrane is basically what is going to maintain our homeostasis, our internal balance. Because for the cell, it's really important that they have the right things inside and outside. So it'll let food and nutrients in, it'll let waste out, it allows for the exchange of gases and for the exchange of water. And so our way to remember this is that members, just like you are a member of a club, only members can come and go through the membrane. And it really is a very unique structure. You can see this picture right here is what it really looks like. We'll get to that a little bit later this year. So here's your chart, cell membrane. I've already filled in that there's yes for all the cells. It maintains homeostasis. Members only can come and go, and it's similar to a window screen, I guess, because things can come in and out of a window screen, or sometimes I say a bouncer at a club that keeps people in and out of that club. And your picture should have the arrow pointing to the outer edge of the cell. Good. Number two that all cells have is the cytoplasm. Sometimes we call this the cytosol, but this is just the gel that fills up the cell. So something has to kind of fill it up and fill out that cell. And so everything kind of floats around in that cytoplasm and gets place to place by going through that gel. So I say the cytoplasm gels, and when you hear the song that I'm going to play for you later, it'll make more sense. But it's kind of similar to hair gel or jello. So for your chart, again, it's cytoplasm, yes across. It's a gel-like fluid, and I said the cytoplasm gels. And your arrow should be pointing inside into the emptiness. It looks empty, but it's just a clear fluid in there. All right, number three in the things that all cells have are ribosomes. So these are really, really important, but they're super, super tiny. So they're usually drawn as tiny little dots everywhere. These are ribosomes, and they are what make proteins. Now, proteins are how the cell operates and how the cell does what it needs to do. So ribosomes are very important. So we say I make some proteins, and it's like the builder of the cell. For your chart, ribosomes, yes across. I make some proteins, and then this should be the picture of these little dots. And the four things that all cells have is DNA. This is technically not an organelle, but we're going to include it here because it's so important. This is your genetic information. And for your chart, we have DNA, yes, yes, yes. The genetic material, that is the recipe for making proteins. I think your how to remember it is a little different. It should say the genetic information, but this should have already been filled out for you. And then, of course, this picture of DNA. All right, so that's the four things that are in all cells. So now let's take a look at what are just in eukaryotic cells. Those are those big cells that make up plants and animals. So this is in every single plant animal cell, but it would not be found in a bacteria cell or a prokaryotic cell. So only in eukaryotic cells. And the biggest one we'll find this out next week as well, is it's a nucleus. So bacteria cells don't have a nucleus, but eukaryotic cells do. And the nucleus is the control center. It holds the DNA and it keeps it safe. It's the boss. It also contains another structure that you won't have to know called the nucleolus, but it's in all the pictures. So the nucleolus is a little nucleus inside the big nucleus. So again, nucleus is the control center and it holds the DNA. That's what's really important about it. If we look at your chart for nucleus, it's no for prokaryotic cells, yes for eukaryotic, both plants and animals. And again, this is the control center, the boss. You can see here, this is the nucleus. That's that nucleolus I was talking about. And these little hair-like structures, those are the DNA in the form of chromosomes. And that's sometimes how we refer to DNA as chromosome. Here's a little information about the nucleolus. It's the little nucleus inside the nucleus. It really makes ribosomes, but this is not one that we have to know for any test or quiz. So let's look at some other things that are similar in all eukaryotic cells, both plant and animal cells. So the first thing we have is something called the endoplasmic reticulum, sometimes abbreviated the ER. Again, this is kind of like this weird maze and these membranes that make up these tunnels or these channels. It's always going to be found right around this nucleus. The rough one, which has these little ribosomes attached, is usually right on the nucleus. And then we usually have this smooth one that looks just a little bit different. It does not have the ribosomes attached. And this basically works as a series of highways or roads that allows materials that are made there, like proteins and lipids, to be transported away and into the cell. So you can see in all of these pictures, again, it's a nucleus. There's our rough ER with the ribosomes, rough ribosomes, and the smooth ER, which don't have the ribosomes. And so the smooth ER is usually a little bit further out, but they're both very, very close to the nucleus. And that's how you're going to tell them apart from the Golgi body, which we'll talk about in a minute. So in your chart, it's down here at the bottom, endoplasmic reticulum, again, not found in prokaryotic cells, but found in plant and animal. I'm a transporter, because they transport things away from the nucleus into the cell. I'm a transport ER. So it's kind of like a highway or a series of passageways. All right, now this is the one I was talking about that you sometimes get confused with the ER. This is the Golgi body, sometimes called the Golgi apparatus. Again, found in plant and animal cells. And people say it looks like a flattened stack of pancakes, but those are some weird looking pancakes to me. So I'm not sure you would eat those. In any case, when materials come in here, so these chemicals and materials are going to be sent to the Golgi body, and they're going to be modified and changed. They're going to be sorted. They're going to be packed up, and then they're going to be sent where they need to go. And so we call this the golden packer, kind of like UPS. But I did find this one picture that I thought was kind of interesting. This is your Golgi body, and it's looking at some material, and it's saying, okay, you look like a cytosol guy, and I'm going to send you to the cytosol. Or it might send it to the cell membrane, or secrete it, or send it to a lysosome. So the Golgi apparatus gets to decide kind of where everything needs to go, and so it has to package it up and modify it, and then send it where it needs to go. So here's the Golgi body, again, not in prokaryotic cells. This is only in eukaryotic cells. And it's a golden packer for Golgi body. And UPS, which does that packing, modifying, and sorting, is also gold. So it's a good way to help you remember that. Next, we have the mitochondria, which we've talked about before. This is what they call a jelly bean shaped structure. Now, it does kind of look shaped like a jelly bean, but in our picture, it does more look like a hot dog. I agree. But this is going to convert that energy stored in the food, glucose, to the energy a cell can use. So this does our metabolism or our cellular respiration. So we call it the powerhouse of the cell, kind of like a power plant. So on your chart, the mitochondria, and I've also added here, sometimes you'll see it called the mitochondrion, but not in prokaryotics, yes to eukaryotic. I'm the mighty powerhouse of the cell. And here's the picture. Yes, it looks like a hot dog, but when you see it not cut open, it looks more like a jelly bean. All right, vesicles. These are found mainly in animal cells, but you'll see them in plant cells as well. These are small vacuoles. They're just small packages, and they're filled with materials that need to move around the cell. So this little circular piece here that's filled with stuff, or this circular piece here filled with stuff. These vesicles can dump stuff out of the cell. They can bring stuff into the cell. They get sent from the ER. They get sent to the Golgi body. They're just basically these little semi-trucks or these Ubers that carry everything around the cell. So they're the vehicles of the cell. So for your chart, it should have said vehicles of the cell, and I know I said Uber, but also semi-trucks. They kind of go hand in hand. They're just stuff that carries things around the cell. So if you need stuff moved, you put it in a vesicle. Now, here are some organelles that are only going to be found in plants. So this is a eukaryotic cell, but not animals, just plants. So the first one is called the large central vacuole, and this is a storage unit. It's like a closet, and it's just going to hold water, food, and nutrients, sometimes even waste. But for plants, this is what fills up the cells and keeps them sturdy. And so if your plant is ever wilting, it's because that vacuole is empty or is emptying. And so they'll vacuum and store it. They'll vacuum up that water, they'll store it in there. And these are found, again, usually only in plants, and they're very large. Like usually they take up almost the entire cell. So large central vacuole, no to prokaryotic cells, no to animal cells, but yes to plants. And it says, I'll store anything. And so this is like a closet or like a vacuum. And this one is just like a big circle because it just stores materials in the cell. Really has no defined shape. Just a few more, we're almost done. The next thing a plant cell has, but animal cells do not have, would be a cell wall. This is a rigid outer layer that's going to give it added support. So animals, we're kind of flexible and our cells don't need that extra support, but plants do. And so do prokaryotic bacteria cells. And so this is just like a brick wall. It supports, it's similar to a wall with windows in it. And so for this one, make sure you check your chart. This is a yes to prokaryotic cells because those really simple cells need a little extra protection. It's a no to animal and a yes to plant. So this is like a brick wall. It's on the outside. So there would be a cell membrane inside still though of that. These are like the walls of a building. All right, 2 to go. Another thing only found in plants is called a chloroplast. So obviously plants can't eat the way animal cells eat. This is like seriously a little video of how an animal cell would eat. It would take food in this way. But for plants, they have to make their own food, and that food is made with a chloroplast through the process of photosynthesis that takes energy from the sun and turns it into that glucose that we need. It contains a pigment that makes it look green called chlorophyll. And so when you look at plants and you see it's green, it's because they have these chloroplastidium that are doing photosynthesis and making food for the plant. So we say, make me something sweet to eat. So it's like a bakery or a cafeteria, a chef, a kitchen. So the chloroplast, no, yes. Make me something sweet to eat. And it has these little stacks inside of it. So your picture is different, I think, than this one, but it will have these little stacks inside of it. All right, now last, we have one more that is just going to be found in animal cells and not prokaryotic and not plant. And so these are the lysosomes. This is, again, this little small organelle. It's like a little package, a little round container. But this one's actually filled with digestive enzymes. And those digestive enzymes can break things down. And so old cell parts or things that are invading the cell that need to be captured and destroyed, those are going to go into a lysosome, and then we're going to dump acid on them. And they're going to break up those into parts that the cell actually wants to use. And so it's basically a recycling center, or it's like Lysol, or maybe a toilet. However you want to think about something that's going to break down old parts so they can be reused. So I like this little graphic here. This is the lysosome that's taken this protein. It says, I have to break you down now. You know, so this protein is fighting the dust. Awkward. All right, so for your chart, lysosomes, no, yes, no, because they're only found in animal cells. I clean things up like Lysol, and I like the idea that it's a recycling center. Now this empty circle really should have some dots in it, so if you want to add some dots in yours, because those dots would represent those digestive juices that are eating up the stuff and breaking it down. Unfortunately, I have 2 bonus organelles, and I want you to add these to your chart, just the name and what they are, or a name and a picture. So I'll go kind of slow here, but these are really cool organelles. These are found sometimes in animal cells and prokaryotic cells, but I just want you to be familiar with them. So here we go. The first one is called a cilia. These are little hairs that can be found on the outside of a cell, and they wave back and forth, and they help the organism move. So the short hair are called cilia. Now, some organisms, some single cell organisms don't have cilia like those little hairs. They have something called flagella. So make sure you write down cilia and draw these little hairs and write that they're for movement. You can pause it, you can. And then the next one is the flagella. Now, it's literally like a little tail that whips around, and that tail helps them move as well. And so this can be found on a lot of prokaryotic cells, sometimes animal cells as well that need to move around. And so this is just like a little flagella that sticks out versus cilia, which are more like these hair-like extensions. So make sure you add flagella, make sure you add that it's a tail, and that it's used for movement. So cilia and flagella, those are the 2 things helped with movement for these like single cell organisms that have to move through water or liquid. All right, so that's everything for the organelles. I know that was a lot, so take some time to process that and do some practice with your worksheet with your group. I'll see you soon. Bye, guys.